kick off this year. We had a large kickoff. We had some OVT training. We've had some OVT chair training. We've had the ARC has gone through their training. So now it's really back to these monthly times we can come together and really talk about what you want to talk about around KESA. Now, today will be a little different since this is our first time together. So we have some things to present to you, but by the end of this meeting, we will have in the chat, you'll have a sign up list basically that you can assign topics that you want to talk about at these monthly updates, because this is really your time where we can collaborate. So it's not about us presenting information. It's really about talking about the topics you want to address with KESA. So welcome everyone. My name is Jay Scott. I'm the Director of Accreditation and Design here at KSDE. I'll let my colleagues introduce.
There we go. Good morning, everyone. I'm Myron Melton. I'm the Assistant Director for Accreditation and Design. Been with KESA now working with KESA now for about 3 years. This is obviously a new team for us, bringing the design accreditation piece together. Prior to that, they've been working around the area of social motion learning, school, mental health. So it's a pleasure to be with you guys today. Sarah?
Thanks, Sarah Perryman. I'm the coordinator on our team. Before that was the coordinator for the school redesign project and started my work here with ELA as the language arts consultant. So glad to be with you this morning.
I think we have Jake on with us.
Yeah, Jake's there.
Yep. Hey, everybody, I'm Jake Steele. I'm a doctoral student, and I'm here this year working on special projects at KSDE. And I am from Garden City, Kansas. You all need to know that because it's a great place.
It is a great place. So thanks to my team for jumping on this monthly update, and we'll be monitoring the chat if you have questions as we go through. But has anybody, I know there's all the Halloween knickknacks and all those things in the stores. Has anybody seen any Christmas stuff out already in the stores? I have, and I'm offended. Okay, I love Christmas, but come on, that's too early, right, Katie? It's way too early. So I just had to get that out this morning. It was just eating me up. I needed to talk to somebody about it. So thanks for indulging me, but I think it's just way too early for Christmas. So as we get started today, we wanted to jump into a few particular topics. And I think at this point, Sarah, if we want to pull up the slides, we can just kind of walk through our agenda for this time. And I see Josh on, I see Deanna on. If you can unvideo or show your video, that would be great. It's a great way to connect. We will be sharing these slides if Sarah hasn't already in the chat, which she probably has. So please take some time to interact with us. We'd love to see you on here. So we'll do some introductions. We already did some of those, but I want to show you our team so you can start putting faces to names. We have some people on our team who are not with us this morning. We also want to talk about what makes a comprehensive needs assessment. That's been a common topic, especially as if some systems are in the place where they want to start with a needs assessment or really comprehensive needs assessment. That may not be you. You may be in the middle of a strategic plan that started with a comprehensive needs assessment. But I think some of the things that we'll talk about really apply to any type of needs assessment that you might do in your system. We also want to talk about the criteria that the ARC uses when they're reviewing system, OVT, and the accountability reports. More so on the process side with the system and the OVT reports. And I think today we're just going to stick with the system report. Is that right, Sarah? So we'll also talk a little bit about setting goals, and then we'll end with some reminders for everyone. And then if you have any topics or questions you have today, we'll have a Q&A there towards the end. These are only scheduled for 45 minutes, so it should be brief bites of information, but we want to leave time for you to ask questions, and then also ask you what are topics you'd like to discuss in the future during these monthly updates. So On the next slide is our team. And our administrative specialist is Andrea Pagan. So she will be your first point of contact, especially around the KESA app. She's working hard to learn that. So she will be our help desk basically for the KESA app. Jake Steele, you met with special projects. Sarah, you met. Catherine Schmidling is an assistant director for educator preparation. So before, when it was teacher licensure and accreditation, Catherine was on that team, and she was the only person in the accreditation side of higher ed teacher prep programs. And a lot of people don't know this, but KSDE actually accredits the teacher prep programs in Kansas. So K-State, KU, Baker, those teaching programs, if they have one, are all accredited through KSDE, and Catherine runs that. She also runs the reviews of the teaching programs, like the science teaching program at a particular institution. She would run the program reviews. So it's a very busy job, and we wanted to connect that to accreditation. So P12 accreditation connected with higher ed teacher prep accreditation. So we're excited to have Catherine on board. You met Myron, and you're stuck with me. So that's our team. I just wanted to start putting some faces to names as we support you in your really important work of system improvement. So on the next slide, I think we will, this is our mission. So, oops, a little bit of feedback. So this is our mission within this system of accreditation and design. And when we say design, those are the design principles. We provide accountability along with support to move systems towards ensuring the success of each student. That accountability, an example of that, are the summer check-ins that we did with a few systems this summer. And actually, we're continuing those into the fall, wrapping those up. But basically, those are accountability meetings where we really look heavy at the data and the current state of student performance in the system at that time. The support side is eventually going to be a lot more of coordinating the support. So if your system has a particular issue that you're in need of support, we can connect you to the support providers in the state of Kansas. And we have many, and we have really, really strong support providers like our service centers, Kansas MTSS, those teams that are out there serving our systems already. We just want to coordinate that work a little bit more so it could be more fluid and more responsive. So that's really our mission. That's what our team is all about. And so we get up in the morning to do. On the next slide, we just want to fundamentally walk through these accreditation definitions. I know many of you, this is a complete review, but I am always surprised at how many people they mistake these different definitions. So accredited means that you have both evidence of a process and you're showing growth in student performance or improvement in student performance, evidence of both. And also you're in compliance with all the different compliance areas that we have in Kansas. Conditionally accredited means that one of either process or growth, there's insufficient evidence for one of those. The other one is fine. You have evidence for that, but maybe it's a process issue. Maybe it's a student performance issue there's insufficient evidence of growth in those, or that it's existing. And so that would be conditionally accredited. So it's an or between process and growth. And then also, to be conditionally accredited, you still need to be in compliance. And so not accredited, you can probably guess this, is insufficient evidence of both process and growth, or, and just by itself, not in compliance. So those are our basic fundamental definitions of accredited in Kansas, just to set the table, so to speak, as we start this conversation. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Myron. He's going to walk you through the needs assessment.
Great, thanks, Jay. Yeah, I just wanted to spend a little time on this needs assessment piece. You may have noticed, this year we talked about, those systems in year 1 through 4, really putting an increased emphasis, a focus this year on needs assessment and goals. And And we also talked about, in year 5, how needs assessment goals are really, really fundamental and a real focused piece for the ARC. So we wanted to spend a little time just kind of defining that, because we throw that out there in needs assessment, but we don't always define it as well as we should. I am going to ask Sarah at some point if she could drop into the chat the link to the accreditation document that has the rubric, the guidance document with the rubric in it that really defines a standard for needs assessment. But aside from that, just kind of walk through a little bit about when we talk about needs assessment, what are we talking about? So if you look on the left-hand side here, kind of defining what that is, measures of success in attaining the vision. This is a piece that's really important to us. As you start looking at your data and you start looking at aligning that to your goals and to your strategies, keeping in mind all of those measures are about attaining that vision. We've said multiple times, those state board outcomes are really the North Star. We need to align everything with that goes from building and district level data, aligning your goals, aligning your strategies, aligning all that to that work around the Kansas vision and the state board outcomes. It's important that you be aware that both perception data, this really isn't worded very well because perception data is good data. So I say perception, I say data driven. Perception data is good and valuable data. It lets you know the systems view, those people who work within the system, how they see a particular issue. It may or may not be supported by more about what we would call hard data, but looking at that from both sides, because we all know the perception is reality to whoever perceives it that way. So we need to be looking at both of that. We'll talk a little bit about some sources to collect that here in a little bit. Using both qualitative and quantitative data, it doesn't have to be all percentages and number-driven data. Qualitative data is important too. A lot of our state board outcomes are qualitative. When we talk about social emotional growth, when we talk about kindergarten readiness, IPS, those are our qualitative data pieces. So balancing that qualitative piece along with the quantitative side. Incorporating a wide range of stakeholder input. This is a critical piece within KESA, critical piece with the ARC. We know that we have better results when we have buy-in from stakeholders, when we have parent involvement, community involvement, when people feel like they have ownership within the system. So as we look through that information, you'll notice it reflected in the KESA application. You'll notice it reflected in the work of the ARC, that the stakeholder input is really critical. Identifying underlying root causes, what's negatively impacting student success or our ability to produce student success. So we want to dig down in that root cause analysis piece. We have great resources on our site, on our KSDE site, that walk you through how to do a good root cause analysis. So when we have those data points we don't like, why is it like that, and how can we really dig down to that cause and improve it? That root cause analysis is what's going to lead you to establish those goals. So it's really important that when your goals are established, those goals are established based on this needs analysis. That we're not just picking those goals out of the air. We have a gut level feeling that this is what we need to focus on, but we have data to support those. So that last bullet, really kind of sums that up. This needs analysis establishes your current state. Where are we at currently? Good, honest look at an assessment of your current state. And then it informs your path as you move forward. If this is where we are and this is where we need to be, this data is going to inform what we do, our goals, our strategies, how we implement those moving forward. So that's kind of a summary of that needs analysis piece. On the right-hand side, we're looking at potential data sources. I want you to be clear, this is not a comprehensive list. This is not the end all be all, just some ideas to throw out of things that you may want to consider. Number one, really look and analyze your system accountability report. That's something that at KSDE gets looked at a lot. The ARC is one of the 3 documents: your system report, OBT report, system accountability report are the first three things they're going to look at. So really looking at that as a data source, understanding that report is critical. The next, I talked before about perception data. This component-based analysis, I think I put assessment there, component-based analysis is really that perception data and how you can get to perceptions. And I'm gonna put Sarah or Jay on the spot. This was developed by our design side, our redesign team, and now as part of our design process. When do you want to talk just a little bit about the component-based analysis and how that can be utilized?
Yeah, I can jump in on that. Sarah was integral in developing that, and we actually rolled that out last year with the pilot systems. Some of you may know we're doing a KESA pilot, regional training pilot. And last year we started really with the CBA, the component baseline analysis. And it was really in response to people saying, well, we see the real data, but we want to know what people feel about it. You know, so perception data, I think, is key. And that's what this analysis, this component baseline analysis is all about, around the important components in continuous improvement. So for instance, leadership and culture. How do people feel about leadership and culture in the system, leadership and culture in the building? Another example, kindergarten readiness, a state board outcome. How do people feel that we're doing with kids being ready for kindergarten? What's the perception data? So it's really I know Tammy at Dodge City, I know you all went through that. We heard good feedback in using that component baseline analysis that yielded a deeper understanding of where your current state in that system as you compare that perception data, which could be wildly different than your real data. And you have a chance to analyze that.
Thanks, Jay. So that gives you a little deeper insight into that perception piece and how you can measure that. And again, we've had really good response and feedback in terms of the usefulness of that CBA. Star recognition rubrics. There's a number of systems who choose to apply for STAR, which we are excited about. We know it's on a qualitative side, it is all voluntary, but we really want people to be able to utilize these rubrics, whether they apply or not. We know the state board outcomes, that's, as we said, that's kind of the North Star. We're all kind of aiming that direction, but we need to have a standard. What is the standard? What would a good kindergarten readiness program look like? Or social and emotional, or IPS. This provides those standards for you to measure yourself against. So really going to encourage people to utilize those rubrics as part of your needs assessment. Measure yourself against that standard. That'll provide you the data that you can then respond to in your KESA reports. Again, the Kansas assessment data information, critically important to utilize. Formative data. You have people out there using FastBridge, some are using NWEA map, different data sources that provide that formative data. We know that's really important. Local data is important, so we want to make sure that we're using both local data as well as a system level, state level data. Locally developed surveys, again, that gets you into more of that qualitative side. This next bullet's really critical, this demographic data. It's an expectation within KESA and will be an expectation of the ARC. Your data is disaggregated. That if all we're looking at is aggregate data, but we don't know, are we meeting the needs of all subgroups within our system? So be thinking about whatever data you use, that you disaggregate that and you look at all populations, all subpopulations within your system, and make sure that we aren't unintentionally not meeting the needs of certain groups of students. And lastly, this indicator data piece. A lot of times people will start looking for, oh, I need to go get this piece of data, or I need to adopt something new. There's a lot of data you have internally that really can be informative. I just put a few things here in parentheses: absenteeism, chronic absenteeism. Folks, take a look at that data on your accountability report. Chronic absenteeism is starting to become an issue that we're looking at because it's been an issue in a number of different places. So look at that chronic absenteeism, look at your office referrals, climate and culture measures, student engagement, all those pieces you collect data on. I'll use chronic absenteeism as an example. If you have high chronic absenteeism, that's where you would implement that root cause analysis. Dig down. What does your root cause analysis tell you the problem is? Maybe it's around student engagement. Maybe it's around relationships. Kids don't feel connected to school. But that is your indicator piece of data. So, utilize data you currently have at your hands as indicators as to what issues may be. Dig down with that root cause analysis. That'll help you establish those goals and strategies. So I'm going to stop there. We're going to kick this back over to Sarah, I believe. But there was a lot of information there. So please feel free to drop any questions you have in the chat and we can respond to those.
Thanks, Myron. So we do also want to spend a little bit of time going through the accreditation criteria. And before I dig into that, I just want to know from this group, when I say accreditation criteria, do you know what I'm talking about? Thumbs up, or you're, what? You have that shocked look of surprise on your face. So if you would mind, hit the reaction that most resonates with you right now when we're talking about the accreditation criteria. Do you know what we're talking about in some level, or is this a brand new concept for you? Go ahead and click those reactions. Seeing lots of thumbs up. I don't think I've seen a surprised face yet. That's good. Good. Well, we want to make sure that folks are familiar with this, understand what's in that document, because just like we do with our students, we want to make sure that the expectation, that criteria for how you're going to be reviewed and evaluated, that you know that up front. So thinking about what's that standard, what's the expectation, and then using that along the way so that as you're completing your reports and submitting your evidence and artifacts, make sure that have you met that criteria that's been established. So I want to take a few minutes, and that link is here for you, to just walk through the accreditation criteria and make sure folks know what's being reviewed and the standard to which it's being reviewed by that ARC. So as Myron said, when the ARC sits down to review your system in year 5, they look at your system report, your OVT report, and that accountability report. And the framework of the criteria follows the sections of your report. So the first thing they look at is compliance. We know that there are a lot of different things that you are asked to be compliant within, but there are about 16 or 17 that are looked at for the purpose of accreditation. So when we talk about that definition of accreditation, it's these areas of compliance that would be where you'd want to make sure you're meeting that for the purposes of accreditation. The next piece of that rubric really looks at those foundational structures. So we know that any system who wants to be KESA accredited or accredited by the state of Kansas needs to have these foundational structures in place. And so again, we're looking here at what that quality criteria would be, with assuredly being that highest expectation, knowing that you can be generally working on some of these things, or maybe you don't have evidence demonstrating your process around that foundational structure yet. So we have our foundational structures. The next page focuses on your goals and those goal statements, making sure that they are measurable and that there is that connection to those state board outcomes. So as Jay mentioned, we did these summer check-ins as part of our accountability and support process. And the big focus for those meetings was really making sure that the goals that folks have were SMART goals, that they were measurable, that they were connected to the strategies being implemented, that there's that connection to the state board outcomes, but most importantly, that they are really focused on students and that impact on student learning. The next section focuses just on your policies and procedures. Section 6 is really focused on those state board outcomes. Here, this criteria is very broad in general for all of the state board outcomes. So as Myron talked about with a comprehensive needs assessment, use those STAR rubrics as a way to really ensure quality in each of these areas, in addition to reviewing the quality criteria established here. Stakeholder involvement, so making sure that there's opportunity for feedback and involvement and engagement. So not just one-way communication, but there's opportunity for stakeholders to authentically engage in the work of the system. And then looking at that KESA process. So here again, you're going to find a little bit more information about what is expected for that needs assessment. So Myron did a really nice job of explaining what a comprehensive needs assessment is. And here's a place where you can go and reference back of what is that quality criteria for a needs assessment that the ARC is looking for as they review your documentation. Same with your goal statements. And then the last page really is just those assurances that you have certain things in place. So just wanted to make sure that everyone was familiar with that ARC criteria and want to set those reminders that just because you might be in that generally category for some of these areas, that's not a bad thing, right? That's part of your needs assessment to go through this rubric and figure out where you are so that you can create that intentional plan for your own growth and continuous improvement. And we just always want to give that reminder that when the ARC is reviewing your work and giving a rating for that category, for that number of foundational, my apologies, foundational structures or statements, goal statements, the levels of rating do not equate to your accreditation status. So you might be generally in some areas. That doesn't mean that you'll get conditionally accredited because some areas were generally or some were not lacking, does not equate to not accredited. So this is just a general rating that's looked at holistically. I like to kind of compare it to standards-based grading where you have your standards, you have your rubric, and then the evaluator at the end makes a grade determination and a determination about your accreditation status when looking at that picture holistically. So hopefully this wasn't your first time going through that ARC criteria, but just want to make sure that it's a known resource and encourage all of you to continue using that as you work on your system reports and your work this year for continuous improvement. And so I want to pose a question and see if we can get some responses in the chat. I know when I sit through trainings, my wheels start spinning and I start coming up with lots of ideas. And sometimes it's hit or miss if I remember to act on those ideas later. But writing it down and making a public commitment puts a little bit more urgency and upside accountability to actually follow through on some of those ideas that get sparked in these meetings and in these settings. So take a second to just reflect and put in the chat, what are you going to do next with the ARC criteria now that we've reviewed it together? So take a minute and just think, what might you do next with this new understanding with this document now that we've reviewed it? So let's see if we can get some ideas in the chat.
Sarah, where is that document at that you just showed us?
It is on our webpage, on the main homepage for KESA at the bottom. It is there, but I just dropped the link directly to it in the chat.
So while you guys are responding to that question, I just want to jump in. I know Sarah did a nice job of explaining this, but I want to be real clear that, you know, the ARC process, we just met with our ARC here recently. We had this conversation and it's been an ongoing theme with them that they really do want to be transparent. There's always this idea that somehow there's this man behind the curtain and what's going on over there. This, you know, providing this criteria, this accreditation criteria is another attempt just to be transparent. You know, if you have questions about the ARC or how the ARC functions, or none of that should be done in secret. It's a very open process, and this is exactly the documentation that they look for, where they compare your documentation to, is what's in that rubric. So if ever you feel like that there's not transparency there, or you're wanting to know what's that ARC actually looking at, we are open to respond to any of those questions.
Thanks, Myron. Lots of commitments coming through in the chat. It sounds like lots of folks have used this already as their with their district leadership team, their district site council, continuing to do that, using it as an OVT chair to help make sure that you're providing some constructive feedback to your system. I saw one about using this to help define what quality evidence you want to provide to accompany your report. So that data that you include and the artifacts that you upload. Awesome. So again, we won't print these off with a checklist with your names and make sure next month that you did all of these things, but writing down that commitment, voicing that commitment, we just know that that will help increase that that action step being taken after this meeting to use that criteria in a meaningful way. So thank you for taking some time to be reflective and to put that commitment in the chat. And like Myron said, if we can answer any questions or provide any support, please let us know. And with that, I will turn it over to Jay to talk about our last topic for today.
Thanks, Sarah. I just want to comment on some of those things I saw in the chat. It's great to see that the whole staff is actually digging in on those quality criteria for accreditation. We've always said this, if KESA doesn't have an impact on the classroom, then it's not worth the letters in the acronym, right? It's really not worth anything. So having that impact at the classroom level is so important. So thank you for all those wonderful ideas of how you're engaging your staff in this needs assessment around the criteria. So from Myron talking through what a comprehensive needs assessment is, to Sarah actually giving you a tool that you can use to evaluate how comprehensive the needs assessment process is in your district, to the next step, which is setting goals. And the reason we're narrowing down on the setting goals is that it's how we started this. When we started KESA, it was pick 2 R's. So the goals that were shared were relevance, rigor, any of those 4. And so we've evolved from that, which has been a natural evolution. We've evolved to better goals. But we're still seeing, especially last year and some of the year 5 systems that went through last year, a lack of specificity in their goals. We saw some that said increase family engagement. So we wanted to take it a step further. That's a goal area. It needs to be driven by what you find out in your needs assessment. So let's say, for instance, you have identified through your needs assessment that there is a need to address self-regulation with your students. So, and again, that's based on the needs assessments, what you learn from that. You could identify a metric that could be used to measure progress in that goal area. That's a key piece. Some people have multiple measures. We really encourage people to narrow down to one measure. You might have sub measures, but one measure that overall you can look at each year, or maybe every semester, maybe even more frequent, but you can measure progress in that goal area. So for example, we have some systems that the goal area is self-regulation. They are tracking the number of ISS, OSS each year. And so from that really builds the process where you can clearly state your goal. My son loves to play golf. I love to play golf with him, except when he beats me, then I don't like golf. But one of the things that he's really trying to do is he's trying to improve his score, for 18 holes. And we've narrowed it down to, and I love how his coach always asks him after every round, how many putts did you have? And so what we've narrowed it down to is that he has too many 3 putts. And I can't say anything to him about it because I'm happy with a 3 putt. Honestly, in some cases, but he is right now averaging around 39 putts for 18 holes. His goal is to get to 33 putts as an average for 18 holes. And so just by doing that, he can reduce his score by 6 strokes. So his goal is this: move from an average of 39 putts in a round to an average of 33 putts by March of 2023, right before the season starts. So that's And that's technically a very sound goal that he can track as he goes along, obviously. And so what you want to do is shoot for something similar at the system level. What is your desired state for students in self-regulation? That's your Y. What's the current state from your needs assessment? That's your X. And how much time will it take to move from X, your current state, to Y, your desired state? And clearly define that measure. And you can state that in a simple form, X to Y by when structure. And a lot of times what we see in the goals that are written, and it's fine, we see some strategies that are actually written. We're going to implement something to address this issue. That's a strategy. A goal is something you look at holistically, a lag measure that you're looking at quantitative data. The strategy is how to accomplish that goal, but what is the goal? And that's what we really focus on in setting goals, is just that from X to Y by when, based on the needs assessment process that you found. So that's really all we had about setting goals. Just a quick reminder on that. On the next slide, we actually have an example. We won't spend much time with that. That's just an example that we actually took from a system last year. And it checks all the boxes on the SMART criteria. So that's, in a nutshell, needs assessment, what it is, how you can assess your comprehensive needs assessment, and then quality goals as you move forward to really help drive, because those goals that you set need to be so compelling, it's going to take everybody's best effort to reach. It's that important. Those are wildly important goals. So that's just the content that we had for today. We just have a few reminders, and I'll let Sarah take you through that before we open up for Q&A.
Yeah, so any system that is currently in year 5 of the accreditation process, we need to know the date of your OVT on-site visit. That date lets us know when all of your documentation should be uploaded into the system. So your system report is due 30 days before that visit. Your OVT report is due 30 days after. And so knowing your visit date is how we track and plan for our accreditation reviews and how we pace that out. So we need to know the date of your visit so that we can make sure we get you before the ARC this year in a timely fashion. All you need to do is send a very quick email to accreditation@ksde.org with the name of your system and the visit date. Very quick, very simple. We would appreciate you getting that to us at your earliest convenience. We are going to have these scheduled for the first Tuesday of every month from 9 to 9:45 before the state board meeting. So our next meeting will be November 8th from 9 to 9:45. It's that same Zoom registration. So if you registered today, hopefully that was able to give you that link and that access to all of the meetings, but it is available on our website. And we would really like to see these meetings become really driven by content that you want to see shared, and really give this as a space for you all to make the most of your learning with us just as those facilitators. So if there is something that you would like to talk about, learn about next time, please let us know. For this first meeting, we wanted to make sure that we were articulating some of the messages that we've been sending and sharing with schools this year as it started. So feel free to put in the chat some things that you'd like to talk about next time, or send us an email at accreditation@ksd.org. And with that, I'll turn it back to Jay, and we can.
So we have just about 5 minutes left. And I noticed Kelly asked the question about when will the updated accountability report be posted. That's January of 2023, as Sarah put in the chat. However, you can see your updated post-secondary effective rate for the classes of 2016 through 2020, and the graduation rates for those classes, the 5-year average, the 5-year for high school graduation, the 5-year average for post-secondary effectiveness. You can see the 2016 through 2020 in the AMOS data. If you go into AMOS, you can find your updated 2016 to 2020 data. And what you see right now in the accountability report is your 2015 to 2019. So you can see that updated in AMOS. Has anybody taken a look at that? They've seen that data in AMOS? Maybe not. But Deanne's giving me the heads up. Okay. So what questions do you have as we wrap up our time together today? No one wants to ask questions when there's 3 minutes left in the meeting, right? Everybody's ready to move on. But
Jay,
here we go.
there's a question in the chat about DQC is necessary for accreditation. Is that part of the compliance?
Yeah, that's data quality. The DQC training is required for whoever submits your kids report. If you have any questions about that, you could contact Kathy Grossenbacher. Maybe Sarah could put her email address in the chat. But Kathy Grossenbacher is our director of IT. Her team runs those DQC trainings, and it is a compliance issue. You must have whoever submits your kids report go through that data quality, basically assurance training. Good question. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. I can only keep things simple. That's just how I work. I can only keep them simple. So what Sarah said is very true. We're going to send out a document where you can add in topics that you'd like to talk about. I know that in a month's time, you may have multiple topics that hit your come across your desk or across your mind. But if you get a moment and you have something really that you feel like is significant and you want to discuss as a group, please list those on that document and that we will send out, and we will build the agenda basically from the topics that you provide. We'll probably just, dive into 2 or 3 each time with 45 minutes, but feel free to add those topics on there. We can always push them to another meeting. Our goal with these is to be for you. So we want to be responsive to what you have. We want to answer your questions, discuss topics. I'd love to discuss some of these topics at a deeper level with people like yourselves. So please add into that. If I don't see anything else in the chat, Myron, Sarah, anything else for the good of the cause? Okay, this wraps up our first KESA monthly update. So thanks for joining with us. Have a great rest of your day.